I'm Lily, 32, founder of Moonstone Jewelry in Portland. 5 years ago, I walked away from my corner office at my family's tech empire to follow my passion for handcrafted jewelry. My father called it a hobby. My mother worried about my future, and my sister mocked my tiny storefront while they ran their multi-million-dollar company. None of us could have predicted that one day their $100 million contract would land on my desk requiring my signature. If you're watching this from a small business you started despite everyone's doubts, drop your location in the comments and hit subscribe to join others who turned underestimation into their greatest motivation. Growing up in the Anderson family meant one thing above all else: business success was the ultimate measure of your worth. My childhood home wasn't just a place where we lived, it was the incubator for a particular mindset that valued corporate achievements over everything else. My father, James Anderson, built Anderson Technology Consulting from nothing more than a spare bedroom office and sheer determination. By the time I was 10, his company had grown into a regional powerhouse with offices in 3 states. He worked 16-hour days, his eyes constantly glued to spreadsheets, market projections, and client proposals. His favorite phrase at dinner was calculated risk, something he mentioned so often that my sister and I made it into a drinking game in our teens, sipping water whenever he said it. My mother, Diana, was no less ambitious. As the company's chief financial officer, she matched my father's drive with meticulous financial strategy. She could recite quarterly earnings from memory and spot a budgeting error from across the room. Mom wore power suits, even on weekends, her posture always perfect, her expression always calculating. The rare times she attended my school events, she'd be on her phone during intermissions, closing deals or solving crises. Then there was my older sister, Audrey. 4 years my senior, she was the perfect corporate heir apparent. She had our father's strategic mind and our mother's attention to detail wrapped in an ambitious package that never questioned the family values. By 25, she was already the chief operating officer at Anderson Tech, with a corner office larger than some apartments I've lived in. Family gatherings weren't about connection or celebration, they were extensions of the boardroom. Thanksgiving dinner included discussions about market expansion. Christmas morning came with talks of year-end bonuses. Even vacations weren't safe. I remember my father taking business calls while standing waist-deep in Hawaiian waters, the phone precariously held above the waves. My artistic tendencies were always viewed as a charming phase I would eventually outgrow. When I spent hours sketching jewelry designs instead of studying business cases, my mother would pat my hand and say, "It's good to have hobbies, dear, but remember what really matters." My father was less subtle. "Artists starve, entrepreneurs thrive," he'd remind me whenever I mentioned creative career paths. In this atmosphere, I did what many children from such families do: I conformed. I got my MBA from Wharton just as Audrey had done. I joined the family business in the marketing department, where my creative instincts could serve the corporate gods while still giving me a thin connection to design work. For 3 years, I played the part attending strategy meetings, contributing to branding campaigns, and showing up at networking events with the perfect professional smile. But something was missing. Despite the external validation, the comfortable salary, and the apparent family approval, I felt hollow inside. The corporate world was slowly suffocating the creative spirit that had always defined me. I found myself sketching jewelry designs during meetings, hiding my sketchbook whenever someone walked by my office. That emptiness led me to sign up for jewelry making classes at a local art studio. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, I would slip away from the office early, telling colleagues I had appointments. In that small studio, surrounded by tools, metals, and gemstones, I felt more alive than I had in years. My instructor, an older woman named Ruth, with hands marked by decades of metalwork, noticed my natural ability and encouraged me to pursue it further. "You have the touch," she told me one evening, as I finished a particularly intricate silver pendant. "Some people struggle for years to develop what comes naturally to you." That comment stayed with me, whispering possibilities I'd long tried to ignore. Maybe my phase wasn't a phase at all. Maybe it was my true calling, buried under years of family expectations and corporate conditioning. The decision didn't happen overnight. It was a slow realization, like water gradually filling a vessel until it finally overflows. Each corporate meeting I sat through became more unbearable. Each jewelry piece I created in my evening classes brought more joy. The contrast became impossible to ignore, and eventually I knew something had to change. What my family didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that for me, success wasn't measured in market share or profit margins. It was found in the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with my own hands, in seeing someone's eyes light up when they put on a piece of jewelry that spoke to their soul. That kind of fulfillment couldn't be quantified on any spreadsheet my parents might prepare. The evening I chose to tell my family about my decision to leave Anderson Tech still burns vividly in my memory. Mom had organized a dinner at Castellino's, the upscale Italian restaurant downtown, where our family celebrated major company milestones. The occasion that night was Audrey's promotion to executive vice president. The table was adorned with fresh flowers, expensive wine flowed freely, and my father had already given 2 toast speeches about Audrey's business acumen. Between the main course and dessert, while everyone was riding high on celebration and Cabernet, I cleared my throat and said I have an announcement too. All eyes turned to me with expectant smiles. In that moment of attention, my throat tightened, but I pushed forward. I'm leaving Anderson Tech to start my own jewelry business. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's smile froze, then slowly morphed into something between confusion and amusement. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Audrey blinked rapidly, processing my words as if I'd spoken in an alien language. Then my father laughed, not a supportive chuckle but a dismissive sound that cut through me like a knife. A jewelry business, like those mall kiosks. He shook his head, turning to my mother. Diana, did you hear that our MBA graduate wants to string beads for a living? My mother's face registered concern, her brow furrowing as she calculated the implications. Lily, honey, is everything okay at work? If you're feeling overwhelmed, we can adjust your responsibilities. I'm not overwhelmed, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm unfulfilled. This is something I need to do. Audrey, never one to miss an opportunity to establish her superiority, raised her wine glass with mock seriousness. To Lily's brave venture into the cutthroat world of what friendship bracelets. Her laughter rang sharper than our crystal glasses. You're throwing away a real career for a hobby. My father's amusement had hardened into disapproval. Do you have any idea how many people would kill for your position at Anderson? It's not about the position, I tried to explain. It's about following my passion. Passion doesn't pay mortgages, my father countered, his business mind, already calculating my financial ruin. The remainder of that dinner was excruciating. My announcement had transformed from a declaration of independence into a family intervention, with each member taking turns explaining why I was making a catastrophic mistake. 2 weeks later, I packed up my office, ignoring the pitying glances from coworkers who'd heard rumors of my mental breakdown. The small severance package I negotiated would cover 3 months of expenses while I established my business. Beyond that, I was on my own, exactly as I wanted to be. Finding a retail space proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. Landlords wanted business plans, revenue projections, and evidence of prior retail success, none of which I had. After being rejected for 7 spaces, I finally secured a tiny storefront in a transitional neighborhood. The rent was steep for the square footage, but it was all I could get. Moonstone Jewelry opened with little fanfare on a rainy Tuesday morning. My savings funded a modest inventory, display cases, purchased secondhand, and a simple point-of-sale system. The first day I made exactly 0 sales. The second day brought 1 curious customer who browsed but left empty-handed. By the end of the first week, I'd sold 3 pairs of earrings and 1 necklace, barely covering my credit card processing fees. Those first 6 months tested every ounce of my resolve. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning to make jewelry before opening the shop, stay open until 8 at night, then return home to update my fledgling website and social media accounts until midnight. Some days I'd sit in my empty store questioning everything about my decision, wondering if my family had been right all along. Financial challenges mounted quickly. I had to downgrade my apartment, sell my car for a used model, and cut expenses to the bone. Each month I watched my savings dwindle, while sales trickled in too slowly to compensate. The freedom I'd sought came with a constant gnawing anxiety about making rent, both for my apartment and the store. My family's response during this period only intensified my self-doubt. Thanksgiving at my parents' home became an exercise in endurance. "How's the little shop doing?" my father would ask, his tone making clear he already knew the answer. We're still holding your position, you know. Smart people admit when they've made a mistake. My mother took a different approach, sending me job postings with notes like, "Just thinking of you, dear." The subtext was always the same: come back to the real world. Audrey was the most direct in her disapproval. Her Instagram posts from business class flights and executive retreats often included captions about the difference between hobbies and careers, or why some businesses succeed while boutique ventures fail. She never tagged me, but the target of these barbs was unmistakable. The Christmas gathering was particularly painful. Audrey announced her engagement to another tech executive, complete with a dazzling diamond ring that probably cost more than my entire inventory. When conversation turned to my shop, my sister's new fiancé asked innocently what kind of jewelry I made. Before I could answer, Audrey interjected, "Oh, it's very artisanal." The way she emphasized that last word transformed it from a compliment into something quaint and inconsequential. "More like artisan fail," my father quipped, generating a round of laughter that excluded only me. Even my small victories went unacknowledged. When I mentioned being featured in a local blog about up-and-coming Portland businesses, my mother nodded distractedly and changed the subject to Audrey's wedding plans. When I brought a gift of handcrafted cufflinks for my father's birthday, he thanked me politely but never wore them. The constant message was clear: my business wasn't real, my achievements weren't significant, and my return to the family company was inevitable once reality set in. Their position for me remained open, a reminder of what they considered my only viable path forward. Despite my family's dismissal, something stubborn inside me refused to give up. Maybe it was the Anderson determination genes, expressing themselves in an unexpected way, or perhaps it was simple defiance. Whatever the source, I channeled that stubbornness into making moonstone jewelry succeed against the odds. I analyzed what made my pieces unique and doubled down on that aesthetic. While most local jewelers were creating either traditional pieces or following fleeting trends, I developed a signature style that blended minimalist modern design with old-world craftsmanship. Each piece told a story: clean lines with unexpected details, contemporary shapes with hand-hammered textures. This wasn't mass-produced mall jewelry, nor was it hippie-style festival wear. It occupied a unique space that resonated with professionals looking for subtle distinction. Social media became my lifeline. I couldn't afford traditional advertising, so I poured hours into creating an authentic online presence. Each piece was photographed professionally, against simple backgrounds that highlighted the metalwork. I shared behind-the-scenes videos of my creation process, giving viewers insights into the craftsmanship behind each item. My captions were personal, honest about both struggles and triumphs. The local artisan community proved surprisingly supportive. Unlike the cutthroat corporate world I'd left behind, fellow jewelry makers and boutique owners operated with an abundance mindset. Tracy, who owned a leather goods shop 2 blocks away, introduced me to her loyal customers. Miguel, a metalsmith with 20 years of experience, spent an entire Sunday teaching me advanced soldering techniques that would have taken months to learn on my own. These connections led to my first real break 3 months after that miserable Christmas gathering. Paige Wilson, a fashion blogger with 50,000 followers, wandered into my shop on a Saturday afternoon. She tried on several pieces, asked thoughtful questions about my process, and purchased a silver cuff bracelet with an unusual moonstone setting. The following week, Paige featured the bracelet in her Portland Hidden Gems post. She wrote about the exquisite craftsmanship and quiet confidence of my designs, describing them as investment pieces for the discerning professional who wants something beyond the luxury brands everyone recognizes. Her post included my shop address and website, along with professional quality photos of her wearing 3 different moonstone pieces. The impact was immediate. That weekend, my tiny shop had a line outside before opening. I sold more in 2 days than I had in the previous month. My website crashed briefly from the traffic surge. For the first time, I had to start a wait list for custom orders. This momentum continued as word spread. A local magazine included Moonstone in their Portland's Best issue. A boutique owner in Seattle reached out about carrying selected pieces. My Instagram following grew from a few hundred to several thousand, with engagement rates that larger brands would envy. 6 months after Paige's post, I hired my first employee, Zoe, a recent art school graduate with a specialty in metalwork. She started part-time helping with production and manning the store when I needed to source materials or take rare days off. Her fresh perspective and technical skills complemented my design sensibilities perfectly. More importantly, Zoe believed in Moonstone's potential with an enthusiasm that reinforced my own conviction. With business growing steadily, I relocated to a larger space in a better neighborhood. The new shop featured larger windows for natural light, a small workshop area visible to customers, and proper display cases that showcased my expanding collection. The rent was triple what I'd paid initially, but sales more than justified the expense. Through all this growth, my family remained steadfastly unimpressed. When I texted them about moving to the new location, my mother responded with, "That's nice, dear. Audrey just closed a 7-figure deal with Toyota." My father's check-in calls always included some version of hanging in there, as if my business were a temporary diversion rather than a growing enterprise. Audrey's wedding that spring provided a perfect stage for their continued dismissal. During the rehearsal dinner, my father introduced family members to business associates in attendance. When he reached me, he said, "And this is our younger daughter, Lily. She's taking some time to explore her creative side with a little jewelry operation." The patronizing tone reduced 3 years of hard work to a gap-year activity. Later that evening, my father cornered me by the bar. 3 scotches in, he was feeling particularly candid. "Nice little operation you've got," he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Your mother showed me that blog thing. Good for you finding your niche." I nodded cautiously, sensing a but coming. But he continued, "Right on cue. When you're ready for a real challenge, let me know. There's always room for an Anderson at Anderson Tech." The real challenge comment stung particularly. He had no idea about the 16-hour days, the financial risks, the strategic planning, and the 1,000 decisions that went into building my business from nothing. In his mind, real business happened only in boardrooms with spreadsheets, never in studios with jewelers' tools. My mother's first visit to the new shop location came as a surprise. She appeared one Tuesday afternoon, dressed in her typical business attire, looking somewhat out of place among my earthy-toned decor and artistic displays. "I was meeting a client nearby," she explained, though I suspected the visit was more intentional than she admitted. "Thought I'd see the new place." I gave her a tour, showing her the workshop area, the expanded display collection, and the small office space where I handled administrative work. She nodded along, asking occasional questions about my materials or techniques, but always with the air of someone making polite conversation rather than showing genuine interest. As she was preparing to leave, she paused by a display case featuring my premium collection. "These are actually quite beautiful, Lily," she said, studying a pair of gold earrings with unusual geometric design. "I had no idea you were making pieces at this level." For one hopeful moment, I thought she might finally be seeing my work through unbiased eyes. Then she added, "Have you considered approaching some of the department stores? You could probably license your designs and scale without all this." She gestured vaguely at the shop. Overhead. Even in her compliment, she couldn't help suggesting that my approach to business was somehow flawed, that real success would come only through corporate channels and mass production, not through the artisanal path I'd chosen. As she left, she air-kissed my cheek and said, "We miss you at the family dinners. Try to come this Sunday." The invitation was genuine, but the subtext was clear. They were still waiting for me to return to the fold, still expecting this chapter to close. What they couldn't see or refused to see was that Moonstone Jewelry wasn't a chapter. It was my story being written on my terms, with success defined by my own metrics. And despite their dismissal, that story was increasingly becoming one of undeniable success. On a rainy Wednesday afternoon, about 4 years into my business journey, a woman in her early 50s entered my shop. Unlike many first-time customers who browsed hesitantly, she moved through the space with confident curiosity, examining pieces closely and asking insightful questions about techniques and materials. "These are extraordinary," she said, holding a pair of silver and labradorite earrings up to the light. "The balance between structure and organic form is quite remarkable." Her name was Eleanor Prescott, and she purchased 3 pieces that day: the labradorite earrings, a hammered gold bracelet, and a statement necklace with moonstone and tanzanite. Before leaving, she took one of my business cards and mentioned she'd be back. True to her word, Eleanor returned the following week, this time with specific questions about custom work. "My husband's firm holds an annual gala," she explained. "I'd love something unique to wear, perhaps a coordinated set." Over the next month, Eleanor visited regularly as we collaborated on her custom collection. During these sessions, our conversations evolved beyond jewelry. She told me about her background in art history, her charitable work with arts education programs, and her passion for supporting independent artists. I shared stories of my journey building Moonstone, the technical challenges of certain designs, and my vision for future collections. "You know, Lily," she said, during one fitting, "you have a rare combination of artistic vision and business sense. Most creatives I know struggle with one or the other." I laughed. My family would disagree about the business sense part. "Oh, why is that?" I hesitated, then gave her the abbreviated version of my corporate exodus and my family's ongoing skepticism. Rather than offering platitudes, Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "Some people can only recognize success when it follows a path they understand," she said. "Your family sounds like they need a different measuring stick." As our professional relationship deepened into friendship, I learned more about Eleanor's life. Her husband, William Prescott, was the founder of Horizon Ventures, a major investment firm specializing in technology and innovation. She mentioned his current projects involved expanding their portfolio in the Pacific Northwest tech sector. William's been working on a major acquisition, she mentioned casually during one visit, some technology consulting firm that's been dominating the regional market. He sees tremendous potential for growth with the right restructuring and fresh vision. I nodded politely, not making any connection at the time. Our conversations usually focused on art design and personal stories rather than specific business dealings. The custom collection for Eleanor was completed just in time for her gala. The suite included a statement necklace, matching earrings, and 2 complimentary bracelets, all featuring a cohesive design language that showcased both elegant restraint and artistic confidence. When she came for the final fitting, her reaction was everything a designer could hope for. "Lily, these are absolutely magnificent," she breathed, examining herself in the mirror. "William is going to be speechless." 2 weeks after the gala, Eleanor returned with unexpected news. William was so impressed with my collection that he'd like to commission similar pieces as executive gifts for his leadership team and key clients. "Would you be interested in creating a corporate collection?" This opportunity represented not just significant revenue, but also exposure to high-level business executives, exactly the type of clients who could sustain and grow my business. We discussed scope, timeline, and budget, eventually agreeing on a collection of 30 unique but thematically connected pieces. During one of our planning sessions for this project, Eleanor mentioned something that caught my attention. "William was particularly interested in your aesthetic sensibility," she said. "In fact, he's been so impressed with your design language that he suggested we recommend you for another project." "What kind of project?" I asked, curious. "Horizon is finalizing that acquisition I mentioned. The company they're acquiring needs a complete rebrand, everything from logo to marketing materials. William thinks your clean, thoughtful aesthetic would translate beautifully into corporate design." "That's flattering, but I'm not a graphic designer," I pointed out. "No, but you have an exceptional eye. William would connect you with the design firm they've contracted you'd serve as a creative consultant. Would that interest you?" The irony of possibly consulting on corporate branding after fleeing that world wasn't lost on me, but the project sounded intriguing. I agreed to meet with the design firm Axion Creative the following week. During that meeting, I was surprised to learn that the company being acquired wasn't named directly. Everything was under strict confidentiality until the deal closed. The Axion team showed me mood boards and initial concepts for established technology consulting firm ready for modern evolution. I provided feedback and suggestions drawing on my jewelry design principles of balance, unexpected details, and meaningful minimalism. The Axion creative director was enthusiastic about my input. "This is exactly the fresh perspective we needed. You're bringing a completely different lens to corporate design." Over the next few weeks, I consulted regularly on the rebrand while also working on the executive gift collection. My business was busier than ever, with Zoe now working full-time and a second employee, Taylor, joining to help with administration and sales. It was during this period that a strange coincidence began to take shape. During a call with William Prescott to discuss the gift collection progress, he mentioned something that made my heart skip. "I'm particularly excited about your involvement, Lily, because I believe in connecting the dots between seemingly separate worlds. For instance, the technology firm we're acquiring and your jewelry business appear entirely different, but both succeed through attention to detail and exceptional execution. That's kind of you to say, I replied. May I ask which firm you're acquiring? I used to work in tech marketing. There was a slight pause before he answered. We're still under confidentiality, but since you're involved in the rebrand consulting, it's Anderson Technology Consulting. Do you know them? I nearly dropped my phone. Yes, actually. That's my family's company. Now it was William's turn to be surprised. Your family founded Anderson Tech. Eleanor never mentioned this connection. She wouldn't have known. I explained, my mind racing. I don't typically lead with my family background, and when I mentioned them, I didn't use the company name. The conversation that followed was surreal. William explained that he'd been negotiating with my father and sister for months, impressed with the company's market position, but convinced it needed fresh vision and updated branding to reach its full potential. The acquisition would be worth $100 million, with my father maintaining a leadership role during transition and my sister continuing as COO. This is an extraordinary coincidence, William said, sounding both amused and thoughtful. Or perhaps not coincidence at all, but alignment. Your design sensibility will help reshape your family's company for its next chapter. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. My family had no idea that the rebranding they were agreeing to was being influenced by my aesthetic vision. They had no idea I was connected to William Prescott. And most importantly, they had no idea that their dismissal of my tiny store had led directly to the biggest opportunity in their company's history. The universe, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. The day after my conversation with William, my phone lit up with a call from Audrey. This was unusual. My sister typically communicated through terse text messages or family group chats, rarely calling directly. Lily, she began without preamble, her voice carrying the smug satisfaction I recognized from childhood triumphs. We're having a family dinner this Sunday. Dad's making his prime rib and Mom's opening the Bordeaux she's been saving. You need to be there. What's the occasion? I asked cautiously. Just a family celebration. Something exciting happening at Anderson Tech. Her tone was deliberately vague yet self-important. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. Before I could ask more questions, she had ended the call. Sunday evening arrived with a sense of impending drama I couldn't shake. When I pulled into my parents' circular driveway, I noted the presence of not just family vehicles, but also an unfamiliar luxury car with private plates. Clearly, this wasn't just a family dinner. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with suppressed excitement. My father, usually stoic and reserved, was animated, gesturing broadly as he talked with a man I didn't recognize. My mother fluttered between the kitchen and dining room with uncharacteristic energy, while Audrey held court near the fireplace, her expression triumphant. Lily, my father called when he spotted me. Just in time. Come meet Harold Winters from Berkshire Capital. He's been advising us on some exciting developments. Harold shook my hand with the precise pressure of someone who had attended business handshake seminars. Ah, the younger daughter. Your father mentioned you're in retail. Before I could answer, my father interjected, Lily's exploring her creative interests for now. But Anderson blood runs deep. She'll find her way back to real business eventually. The dismissal was so routine that I barely registered it anymore. Throughout the pre-dinner drinks, similar comments surfaced repeatedly. Lily used to be our marketing whiz before she decided to play shopkeeper, Audrey told Harold's wife. She makes lovely little trinkets, my mother added, as if describing a child's macaroni art. When we finally sat for dinner, my father stood to make a toast. He was practically vibrating with self-satisfaction, his chest puffed out like a peacock's. I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate a monumental achievement in the Anderson legacy. He began, raising his wine glass. After 27 years of building this company from nothing, Anderson Technology Consulting is about to enter a new era of unprecedented growth and influence. He paused for dramatic effect, looking around the table. I'm thrilled to announce that we are in final negotiations for an acquisition by Horizon Ventures, valuing Anderson Tech at $100 million. Glasses clinked as everyone except me erupted in congratulations. My father continued detailing how the deal would position Anderson Tech to expand nationally, how he would maintain strategic leadership during the transition period, and how Audrey would continue shaping the company's operations. This is what real business success looks like, Lily Audrey said, directly addressing me for the first time that evening. From local consulting firm to $100 million acquisition. Not bad for the family you walked away from. My father nodded appreciatively at her comment. The team at Horizon recognizes excellence when they see it. William Prescott himself said our market position is unmatched in the region. I nearly choked on my wine at the mention of William's name, but managed to maintain my composure. My family had no idea of my connection to the very deal they were celebrating. As the dinner progressed, the conversation remained firmly focused on the acquisition's details, the valuation methodology, the integration timeline, the leadership structure. Occasionally, someone would remember I was present and make a token effort to include me. Maybe Lily could help with some of the marketing collateral for the announcement, my mother suggested at one point. Audrey laughed. I don't think friendship bracelets fit the corporate image we're going for, Mom. She pulled out her phone and showed something to Harold and his wife. Look at her tiny store, she mocked, scrolling through what I realized were Instagram photos of Moonstone. Cute, right? Like a little dollhouse of commerce. Harold's wife made appropriately polite noises while Audrey continued scrolling. We actually have Axion Creative handling the rebrand. Their top tier worked with all the major tech players. I bit my tongue knowing that Axion was implementing my design direction, but saying nothing. The timing wasn't right. As dessert was served, the conversation turned to next steps in the acquisition process. Harold, who had been relatively quiet, cleared his throat. There is one procedural matter we should discuss, he said, addressing my father. In reviewing the corporate structure documents, we noticed that the original shareholder agreement from when you founded the company includes all family members as signatories for major structural changes. My father waved his hand dismissively. Yes, Diana and I both sign, of course. Standard procedure. Harold looked uncomfortable. Actually, James, it's more complicated than that. When you established the company, you allocated nominal shares to both daughters as part of your estate planning. According to the bylaws, all shareholders must approve an acquisition of this magnitude. The table went silent. My father's brow furrowed in confusion, then cleared as memory returned. Ah, right. The girls each got 5% when we incorporated. Legal advised it for tax purposes. He turned to me with a perfunctory smile. Lily, you'll need to sign some paperwork. Nothing to worry about, just formalities. I'll have the documents sent to your shop tomorrow. I nodded, saying nothing, as the conversation moved on. The evening concluded with plans for the official announcement and celebration once the deal closed the following month. As everyone prepared to leave, my father pulled me aside. This is why we build businesses the right way, Lily. This is the difference between playing with crafts and creating real value. $100 million. His expression was both proud and admonishing. Your signature is just a technicality, but I'd appreciate you coming to the office tomorrow to handle it. No delays. The next morning I dressed with particular care, selecting a tailored blazer over a simple dress, accessorized with my own handcrafted jewelry. The outfit straddled the line between creative professional and business executive, exactly the impression I wanted to make. When I arrived at Anderson Tech headquarters, the receptionist directed me to the main conference room where my father Audrey, our family lawyer, and two representatives from Horizon were waiting. I recognized one as Harold from dinner. The other introduced himself as Stephen Brooks, Horizon's legal counsel. Thank you for coming in, Lily, my father said briskly. We just need your signature on these documents and then we can proceed with the integration planning. Stephen slid a thick stack of papers across the table. Please take your time to review everything. Essentially, these confirm your approval of the acquisition terms and transfer of your shares to Horizon Ventures. I nodded and began reading, aware of my father's impatient finger-tapping. After several minutes of silent review, I turned to page 23, where the acquiring company's executive team was listed. I kept my expression neutral as I read the name under Chief Executive Officer, Horizon Acquisitions Division, William Prescott. On page 27, under Creative Direction, I found rebranding and visual identity refresh to be led by Axion Creative under Consulting Direction from Lily Anderson, founder of Moonstone Design Studios. My family hadn't noticed these details. They'd been so focused on the financial terms and leadership structure that they'd skimmed over what they considered minor operational points. I closed the document and looked up, meeting my father's expectant gaze. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone suggesting there couldn't possibly be one. "I'm just curious," I said calmly. "If you've met William Prescott personally yet." My father nodded. "Twice. Brilliant businessman. Very forward-thinking." "And have you seen the rebranding proposals from Axion Creative?" Audrey jumped in. "I have. They're exceptional, much more sophisticated than our current identity. Very clean, distinctive. Prescott said their creative consultant had an extraordinary eye." I nodded thoughtfully, then slid the document back across the table without signing. "What are you doing?" my father asked, alarm creeping into his voice. "I think we need to discuss a few things before I sign," I replied. "There's nothing to discuss," Audrey snapped. "This is a formality. Your 5% stake is worth $5 million in this deal. Just sign the papers." Instead of responding to her, I turned to Stephen. "Could you give my family and me a moment alone, please?" Once the Horizon representatives had left, my father leaned forward. "What game are you playing, Lily? This is not the time for theatrics." "No games," I said. "Just making sure everyone has all the relevant information before we proceed." I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and found the message William had sent me the previous evening, the one confirming my consulting role and my connection to the deal. I placed the phone on the table and slid it toward my father. He picked it up, confusion evident as he began reading. His expression morphed from puzzlement to disbelief to shock. "What is this?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What?" Audrey demanded, grabbing the phone. Her eyes widened as she scanned the email. "This has to be a joke. Why would William Prescott be emailing you about creative direction for our company?" "Because," I said calmly, "I've been consulting on your rebrand for the past month. I'm also creating an executive gift collection for Horizon's leadership team. William and I have been working together since his wife became one of my best clients." The silence in the room was absolute. My father stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Turn to page 27, I suggested. Audrey frantically flipped through the acquisition document until she found the page. Her face drained of color as she read my name. "This can't be right," she whispered. "Why is your name on the CEO line of our acquisition partner?" My phone rang at 6:30 the next morning. The screen displayed Dad, a rare enough occurrence that I knew immediately this wasn't a social call. I answered, keeping my voice deliberately neutral. "Hello. We need to talk." His tone was tense, controlled. "I've called an emergency meeting at the office. 8 o'clock. "I open my shop at 10, I replied. "I can be there at 9. A pause, then. "Fine. 9 o'clock. My office." The call ended abruptly. When I arrived at Anderson Tech headquarters, the tension was palpable. The receptionist, who had barely acknowledged me the previous day, now watched me with undisguised curiosity as she directed me to the executive floor. News traveled fast in corporate environments. My father's office had always been designed to intimidate: floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a desk the size of a small boat, and walls adorned with awards, press features, and photos with business luminaries. Today, the space felt different. The power dynamics had shifted in a way no one had anticipated, least of all me. My father sat behind his desk, a physical barrier between us. My mother occupied one of the visitor chairs, her posture rigidly perfect. Audrey paced near the windows, unable to contain her agitation. Our family lawyer, Martin Wells, sat quietly in the corner, his legal pad ready. "Sit down, Lily," my father directed, gesturing to the empty chair beside my mother. Once I was seated, he placed the acquisition contract on the desk, open to the page with my name. "Explain this." I recounted the events as they had unfolded, meeting Eleanor, developing our friendship, creating her custom collection, being introduced to William, consulting on the rebrand, and finally discovering the connection to Anderson Tech. I kept my tone factual, avoiding any hint of triumph or vindication. "So you've been spying on us," Audrey interrupted, "feeding information to Prescott." I didn't know the company was Anderson Tech until William told me. I corrected, and I never disclosed anything about our family or my past connection to the business. "This is a clear conflict of interest," my father said, his businessman's mind immediately framing the situation in corporate terms. "You should have recused yourself the moment you learned about the connection." "Why?" I asked simply. "I'm no longer employed by Anderson Tech. I run my own business. There's no conflict. You're manipulating the situation, Audrey accused, her voice rising, using your jewelry hobby to weasel your way into influence. I turned to face her directly. I didn't manipulate anything, Audrey. I built relationships with clients who valued my work. Those relationships led to opportunities. That's how business works, something I thought you understood. My mother, who had remained silent, finally spoke. Lily, what exactly is your role in all this? The document lists you as a creative consultant, but William's email suggests something more substantial. My official role is creative director for the rebrand, I explained. Unofficially, William values my perspective on the acquisition as someone who understands both creative businesses and the technology sector. He's been consulting with me on integration strategies. My father's face darkened. So you've been advising him on how to dismantle the company I spent my life building? No, I said firmly. I've been advising on how to honor its foundations while evolving its identity. The acquisition isn't about dismantling Anderson Tech, it's about growing it beyond what's currently possible with your resources. And now you expect us to believe you'll sign off on this deal out of the goodness of your heart. Audrey's skepticism was biting. After years of rejecting everything we stand for, I took a deep breath. I never rejected what Anderson Tech stands for. I rejected the notion that corporate success is the only kind that matters. There's a difference. My father leaned forward, his expression calculating. What do you want, Lily? Is this about money, position? Do you want a role in the new structure? The question revealed so much about his worldview that everything ultimately came down to corporate hierarchies and financial gain, that people only leveraged advantage for tangible benefits, that relationships were transactional. I want respect, I said simply. Not just for me, but for the choices I've made and the business I've built. I want acknowledgement that success comes in different forms. And I want an apology for the years of dismissal and condescension. An apology, Audrey scoffed. For what? For being realistic about your chances of success in a saturated market, for worrying about your financial stability, for keeping a position open for you when you inevitably needed to come back. No, I replied calmly. For mocking my dreams instead of supporting them. For measuring my worth by your standards instead of mine. For never once visiting my shop with an open mind or heart. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat. My father's expression remained unreadable. Martin, who had been silent until now, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the practical matter at hand. The acquisition cannot proceed without Lily's signature. That's a legal reality we must address. My father's businessman instincts took over. Fine. What are your terms, Lily? I want 3 things, I said, having considered this carefully. First, a formal acknowledgement in the acquisition announcement that Moonstone Jewelry provided creative direction for the rebranding. Second, a commitment that Anderson Tech will provide business development mentorship to 3 artisan businesses of my choosing each year as part of its community engagement program. And third, I want family dinner once a month where business talk is limited to 30 minutes and the rest is actual family connection. My requests clearly weren't what they had expected. Audrey looked confused, my father calculating, and my mother thoughtful. That's it, my father asked suspiciously. No board seat, no executive position, no equity adjustment. I don't want to run Anderson Tech, I explained. I never did. I want to run Moonstone Jewelry and expand it on my terms. But I do want our family to heal, and for you all to recognize that my path is valid too. A long silence followed as my father considered my terms. Finally, he nodded curtly. The Creative Credit and Business Mentorship Program are acceptable. The family dinner. He hesitated, then continued. Also acceptable, though I maintain the right to discuss business if urgent matters arise. Agreed, I said, as long as urgent doesn't become every conversation. Martin made notes, then looked up. Shall I prepare an addendum to the acquisition documents with these terms? My father nodded, then fixed me with an appraising look that was different from any he'd given me before. It wasn't warm exactly, but it contained something new, a grudging respect. You negotiate like an Anderson, he said. I am an Anderson, I replied. Just not the kind you expected. The weeks following our confrontation unfolded with surprising developments. Martin drafted the addendum, which William Prescott approved without hesitation. In fact, he seemed pleased by the terms, particularly the business mentorship program for artisans. This aligns perfectly with Horizon's community impact goals, he told me during our next meeting. Your family history gives you unique insight into both worlds. We should expand this program over time. The acquisition moved forward rapidly after I signed. The press announcement included the agreed-upon credit for Moonstone Jewelry, generating significant media interest in the unexpected connection between a technology giant and an artisanal jewelry studio. Orders for my pieces spiked as the story spread, particularly among professional women who resonated with my journey from corporate life to creative entrepreneurship. My father's first visit to Moonstone Jewelry came 3 weeks after the deal closed. It was unannounced, awkward, and transformative. I was working with a customer when the bell above the door chimed, and I looked up to see him standing uncertainly by the entrance, taking in the space with new eyes. "I'll be with you in a moment," I called, finishing with my customer before approaching him. He stood stiffly, hands clasped behind his back, examining a display case with unexpected intensity. "This is handcrafted," he asked, pointing to an intricate silver necklace with interlinked geometric elements. "Every piece," I confirmed. "That one took about 27 hours, including design and execution." He nodded, processing this information as he might analyze a production report. "And you maintain consistent quality across all items?" "Each piece is unique," I explained, "but the standards are consistent, yes." He continued his methodical examination of the shop, asking detailed questions about inventory management, pricing strategy, and production capacity. Beneath the business inquiries, I sensed something else, a genuine effort to understand what I had built. After nearly an hour, he finally said what he had come to say. "The shop is impressive, Lily. More substantial than I realized. You've built something real here." From anyone else, it might have seemed like faint praise. From my father, it was monumental. "Would you like to see the workshop?" I offered. He followed me to the back room where my tools and materials were organized with the same precision he valued in his own operations. I demonstrated basic metalworking techniques, explaining my process for transforming raw materials into finished pieces. "It's both art and engineering," he observed, watching me solder a silver component. "I never considered that aspect." "Most people don't," I acknowledged. "They see either the creative or the technical, rarely both." As he prepared to leave, he paused by the door. "William Prescott speaks highly of your business acumen. Says you have an exceptional understanding of both creation and commerce." I smiled. "I am your daughter after all." His expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Yes, you are." He cleared his throat. "Sunday dinner. Your mother's making pot roast." It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. Audrey's attempts to repair our relationship were more awkward. She sent a text asking if I would design a piece for her upcoming anniversary with her husband. When we met to discuss the commission, her usual confidence was tempered with uncertainty. "I don't really know much about jewelry beyond the big brands," she admitted. "What would you recommend?" "Tell me about your relationship first," I suggested. "Jewelry should reflect the wearer and their connections." Her answer was surprisingly vulnerable, revealing aspects of her marriage I'd never known: her husband's quiet support of her ambitions, their private jokes, the dreams they shared. As she spoke, I sketched initial design concepts incorporating elements from her story. "This is different from how we usually work at Anderson," she observed. "We start with market research, not personal narrative." "Different doesn't mean less valid," I pointed out. "Just different paths to value creation." She examined my sketches with genuine interest. "I like this approach. It's thoughtful." Over the following months, her visits became more regular. She never explicitly apologized for her years of mockery, but her actions spoke of a growing respect. She began recommending Moonstone to her corporate colleagues, bringing in a new clientele of professional women looking for distinctive pieces that expressed individuality within conservative environments. My mother's transformation was perhaps the most profound. During our second family dinner, as Audrey and my father debated some aspect of the acquisition integration, my mother abruptly changed the subject. "Lily, I've been thinking about taking a metalworking class," she announced. "Is there one you'd recommend for beginners?" The table fell silent. My father looked bewildered. Audrey paused mid-sentence. There's a good introductory course at the Arts Center, I replied, hiding my surprise. Ruth Jenkins teaches it. She was my first instructor. 2 weeks later, my mother visited my shop after her first class, her eyes alight with an excitement I'd rarely seen. I made this, she said, opening her palm to reveal a simple but well-crafted copper ring. It's nothing compared to your work, but it's perfect for a first piece, I assured her. The edges are clean, the soldering is solid. As we shared coffee in my small office, she confessed something I'd never suspected. I studied art in college before I met your father. I wanted to be a sculptor. She smiled wistfully. Life took a different turn. It's not too late, I suggested. You could still explore that side of yourself. Perhaps, she mused. The company transition will free up some of my time. I've been thinking about stepping back from daily operations. Over the following months, my mother became a regular presence in my workshop. She started with simple projects, gradually developing skills and confidence. Watching her rediscover her creative voice after decades of suppression was profoundly moving. My business continued to grow in unexpected ways following the acquisition. The publicity brought new opportunities, a feature in a national design magazine, speaking engagements about creative entrepreneurship, and partnership inquiries from retailers interested in exclusive collections. I expanded thoughtfully, maintaining the artisanal quality while scaling production through a small team of trained metalsmiths. Zoe became my production manager, overseeing a workshop of 5 artisans, while I focused on design-client relationships and strategic growth. The business mentorship program proved particularly fulfilling. Working with local artisans to develop sustainable business models allowed me to bridge the two worlds I inhabited, combining creative vision with practical business strategies. Many of the participants were talented creators who simply lacked the business framework to thrive financially. One evening, about a year after the acquisition, I sat alone in my workshop after hours reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The path had not been what I expected when I walked away from Anderson Tech 5 years earlier. It had been harder in some ways, easier in others, and infinitely more fulfilling than I could have imagined. The most profound lesson wasn't about business at all, but about defining success on my own terms. My family had equated success with scale, market dominance, and financial metrics. I had discovered it in craftsmanship, authenticity, and the joy of creating something that connected with people on a personal level. Neither definition was wrong. They were simply different expressions of human achievement. The conflict arose not from the paths themselves, but from the assumption that only one path had value. In finding my way, I had inadvertently helped my family find aspects of themselves they had buried beneath corporate identities. My father was learning to appreciate craftsmanship alongside strategy. My sister was discovering the value of personal connection in business relationships. My mother was reclaiming creative passions she had abandoned decades ago. And I had found strength. I didn't know I possessed the courage to stand firm in my convictions, even when faced with dismissal from those whose approval I had once craved. Sometimes being underestimated is actually your greatest advantage. When people dismiss your dreams, they aren't watching as you build something remarkable. Their lack of attention gives you freedom to experiment, fail, learn, and grow without constant scrutiny or judgment. By the time they finally take notice, you've already created something they can no longer ignore. Success isn't measured by someone else's yardstick. It's defined by alignment between your work and your values, by the impact you have on others, and by the satisfaction you feel when you close your shop at the end of the day, tired but fulfilled. Have you ever been underestimated or had your dreams dismissed by those closest to you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit subscribe and share this video with someone who might need a reminder that their path is valid, even if it doesn't look like everyone else's. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the tiny store can make the biggest impact. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories about following your passion despite the doubts of others.